Welcome back, Freaksters. I'm Mr. Freaky, and you're tuned in to another spine-chilling episode of Is It Real? As always, I'll have 3 terrifying tales for you to decipher whether they're true or pure fiction. But first, let's revisit last week's stories and reveal the truths. The first story, about the striped shirt man, was true. A Reddit user's childhood fear actually turned out to be a horrifying reality, an escaped murderer casing their home. The second story, about the UFO encounter, was also true. The well-documented Falcon Lake incident left an industrial mechanic with severe burns and remains one of the most perplexing UFO cases in history. However, the third story, about the lost hiker, was pure fiction. Congratulations to Rusky Beskar for getting it right and earning this week's shoutout. Now, let's dive into this week's stories. The Green Village Children. In the 12th century, this quiet village became the setting for one of the most peculiar tales in history. It takes place in an ordinary agricultural village, yet it would soon be known for the extraordinary story of the Green Children. On a seemingly typical day, villagers discovered 2 young children, a boy and a girl, near one of the wolf pits, walking around the outskirts of town. What immediately set these children apart was their green-tinged skin, their unfamiliar clothing made from strange materials, and their inability to speak any known language. The villagers were baffled and brought the children to the home of a local landowner, who took them in. The children were in a state of confusion and distress, and they refused to eat any of the food offered to them, despite appearing very hungry. Eventually they found and consumed raw beans, the only food they seemed to recognize and accept. Over time, they gradually adapted to other foods, and their green hue began to fade, suggesting perhaps a dietary deficiency was responsible for their unusual skin color. As the children acclimated to their new environment, they learned to speak English. They told a remarkable story. They came from a strange land where it was always twilight and everything was bathed in a greenish hue. They described their homeland as being underground or in a dimly lit place. According to their account, they were herding their father's cattle when they heard a loud noise, akin to a bell, and suddenly found themselves in this village. The boy was frail and did not survive long after their discovery. The girl, who was stronger, grew up and eventually was baptized and integrated into their society. She worked in a wealthy man's household and later married. The study of the Green Children has been passed down through generations and recorded by various chroniclers. Theories about the children's origins vary widely. Some suggest they were the children of foreign immigrants who had settled nearby and were persecuted, causing the children to flee and find refuge there. Others propose more fantastical explanations, such as the children were from a subterranean world or even another dimension. Despite various attempts to explain the phenomenon, the true origins of these green children remains shrouded in mystery. Story 2. The Mystery of the Hum. In the early 1990s, residents of a small town in the United States began to notice a strange and persistent noise. This low-frequency hum, described as a faint droning sound, similar to an idling diesel engine, seemed to come from nowhere. About 2% of the town's population could hear it, and those who did reported significant distress. The hum was particularly unsettling because it was not consistent. It would sometimes grow louder or quieter, and occasionally disappear altogether, only to return later. It was the most noticeable indoors and at night, leading to many sleepless nights for those affected. People who heard the hum often experienced headaches, dizziness, nausea, and even sleep disturbances, which significantly impacted their quality of life. Various efforts were made to identify the source of the hum. Scientists and researchers descended on the town, armed with sensitive equipment designed to detect and analyze sound waves. They checked for possible industrial sources such as factories or heavy machinery, and investigated natural phenomenon like seismic activity or underground water flow. Despite these efforts, no definitive source was found. Some believe the noise could be coming from large machinery or generators located miles away, yet no such equipment could be pinpointed as the culprit. Conspiracy theorists suggested that the hum was a byproduct of clandestine government experiments or communications equipment, but these theories, while intriguing, lacked evidence. Other researchers proposed that the hum might be a mass psychogenic illness, where a group of people experiences a shared symptom without a physical cause. This theory, however, did not explain why only certain individuals were affected. Despite the ongoing mystery, the hum continued to plague the town. Residents who could hear it tried various methods to cope, including using white noise machines, wearing earplugs, and moving to different parts of the town. In some cases, people even relocated entirely in hopes of escaping the relentless noise. The hum phenomenon has been reported in various parts of the world, but this particular instance remains one of the most well-documented and disturbing cases. The town's residents still live with the mystery, as the source of the hum has never been conclusively identified, leaving them to wonder about the origin of this persistent, eerie sound. And now for Story 3. In the past, a bustling city was overshadowed by a mystery so bizarre it continues to baffle to this day. High up on a hill near a town, the lifeless bodies of two men were discovered under circumstances so strange they seemed ripped from the pages of a science fiction novel. It began with a young boy flying his kite on the hill. As he explored the area, he stumbled upon the two bodies lying side by side. The men were dressed in formal suits and raincoats, an odd choice given the location. Even more peculiar, each wore a lead mask over his eyes, similar to those used by electronics technicians to protect against radiation. The authorities were called, and a detailed investigation began. Beside the bodies, an empty water bottle and a notebook were found. The notebook contained cryptic instructions: 1630, be at the specific location; 1830, ingest capsules; after effect, protect metals; wait for mask signal. The men were identified as electronics technicians from a nearby city. The two men had left their hometown a few days earlier, telling their families they were going to buy supplies for work. Witnesses reported seeing them purchase the raincoats and later spotted them on the hill, where their bodies were found. Everything seemed ordinary until their mysterious deaths. The cryptic note was the first clue. The mention of ingesting capsules suggested the men might have taken some kind of drug or medication. However, the toxicology report was inconclusive due to their advanced state of decomposition, leaving the nature of the capsules a mystery. The lead masks were another enigma. Typically used to protect against radiation, they seemed out of place on a remote hill with no known radiation sources. This led to wild speculations, including the possibility that the men believed they were in contact with extraterrestrial beings, or conducting some secretive scientific experiment. Adding to the intrigue, several witnesses reported seeing unusual lights in the sky over the hill around the time of the men's deaths. Descriptions ranged from bright orange lights to hovering objects, fueling theories of a UFO connection. Friends and family revealed that the two men were interested in spiritualism and had been experimenting with contacting different entities. Despite extensive investigations, the case remained unsolved. Several theories have been proposed. Some believe the men were attempting to contact extraterrestrial beings and wore the lead masks to protect themselves from radiation or light emitted during contact. Others suggest they were involved in a secret experiment related to their work in electronics. Another theory posits that the men were performing a ritual to contact spirits, and the instructions were part of this process. Regardless, this case has turned into a modern legend, inspiring books, documentaries, and endless speculation. Despite the passage of time, their deaths remain one of the most chilling and unsolved mysteries, leaving an unforgettable mark in the annals of unexplained phenomenon. And there you have it, folks. Now you tell me which of these stories you think are real and which were fiction. Leave your guesses in the comments below. One lucky guess could get you a shout out in next week's episode. Until next time, have a horrific evening, everyone, and remember to stay spooky, my friends.